They sent a certified letter. They didn't know who they were sending it to. Tuesday morning, certified letter in the mailbox. I already knew it was bad before I opened it. You learn to read bad news by its weight. Inside, a 72-hour ultimatum. Sell the cabin I built with my own hands or face $500 a day fines and a forced lien on my title. The reason? My home didn't match someone's vision of what this mountain should look like. My family's land, deeded since 1974, and someone had decided it needed to go. I stood on the porch, that letter in my hand, a red-tailed hawk turning slow circles overhead like it already knew something I didn't. My heart was hammering, not from fear. From clarity. Because in that moment I understood something. This wasn't a legal dispute. This was a pressure campaign, and pressure campaigns work on people who haven't done their homework. I had done my homework. If an HOA tried to force you off your own land in 72 hours, what's the first thing you'd do? Drop it in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from tonight. Let me back up 14 years, because this story doesn't start with that letter. It starts with sawdust, a second-hand table saw, and a man who just buried his father. My name is Garrett Holt, retired civil road engineer out of Asheville, North Carolina, semi-retired, meaning I still consult 2 days a week because idle hands make me dangerous. When my father passed in 2009, he left me 11 acres in a remote pocket of the Blue Ridge he'd owned since 1974. The land had a creek, second-growth hardwood, and a structure that had once been a hunting cabin before decades of neglect reduced it to a glorified lean-to, wood stove venting directly into regret. I spent 3 summers rebuilding it myself. Poured the foundation by hand, ran my own electrical conduit, properly permitted, thank you, put in a composting septic system. Sited the whole thing in board and batten cedar I milled from trees harvested on the property. Fresh-cut cedar in August heat is a smell you carry in your chest for years. A hand plane on clean grain, that soft shh like the wood itself is exhaling. There's nothing like building something real. By 2013, I had a 1,400 square foot cabin worth roughly $160,000 if the market was generous. Worth everything if you were the one who'd built every inch of it. Here's the thing about Whitmore Ridge, the unincorporated mountain community I'm technically adjacent to, not inside, adjacent. When I bought this land, there was no HOA, just a loose agreement among 40 families, mostly old-timers, to maintain the shared gravel road and keep the common areas clean. Neighbor stuff, reasonable stuff. Then in 2017, a developer named Cresswell Danning bought 20 acres on the East Ridge and started putting up spec cabins. The algorithmic kind, stained concrete counters, barn door sliders, shiplap on every surface. Designed for Airbnb tourists who have never split wood in their lives. Cresswell filed paperwork to formalize the Whitmore Ridge Homeowners Association. He'd bought enough lots to control the founding board, and sitting at the center of that board like a spider in a very bureaucratic web was a woman named Pet Voss. Let me describe Pet. 63 years old. Immaculate in a way that felt like a warning, hair that didn't move in wind, a smile that reached her cheekbones and stopped well short of her eyes. She drove a pearl-white Escalade with a custom HOA board sticker on the back window, not an official placard, a sticker she'd ordered off Amazon. That detail tells you everything. She had no background in property law, governance, or management. What she had was a laminated copy of the bylaws she'd helped write, a citation pad from Amazon, and an unshakable conviction that this mountain would be better if it looked exactly the way she imagined when she closed her eyes and thought the word tasteful. My cabin, rough cedar, hand-forged iron hardware, a woodpile occasionally visible from the road, offended Pet Voss at a cellular level. She'd left notes on my windshield, sent 2 unofficial courtesy notices. I'd responded to both with polite letters explaining that my property predated the HOA's jurisdiction, that I was not a dues-paying member, and that I wished her a pleasant day. She did not have a pleasant day. And then the certified letter arrived. The letter cited 3 violations. 1. Woodpile visible from the shared easement road. 2. Exterior color inconsistent with the community palette. 3. Unregistered structure, my tool shed. 72 hours to list the property, $500 a day after that, a threatening mention of a lien process that could complicate future title transfer. Now, I want to be precise about something. I am not by nature a litigious person. I spent 30 years as a road engineer. My instinct is to solve problems with geometry and load-bearing calculations, not courtrooms. So my first move wasn't to hire a lawyer. My first move was to drive to the Haywood County Recorder's office and spend 4 hours pulling every document related to Whitmore Ridge HOA. The parking lot outside smelled like rain-soaked asphalt. Inside, fluorescent lights, manila folders, that particular government building calm I've always found oddly steadying. I sat at a reader table with a stack of documents as thick as my forearm. Here is what I found. My property, 11 acres, Holt family deed since 1974. The HOA had been incorporated in 2017. Their CC and RS, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which is the legal document that gives an HOA actual enforcement power, had been recorded in 2018. For an HOA's CC and RS to bind a property owner, one of two things must be true. Either the property was formally annexed into the HOA's jurisdiction with the owner's written consent, or the property was sold subject to those covenants after the recording date. I had done neither. I had signed nothing. I had agreed to nothing. I had been sitting on my own land, minding my own business, cutting my own wood. Takeaway: an HOA cannot legally enforce CC and RS against a property that was never annexed into its jurisdiction with the owner's documented consent. I drove home calm, typed a 3-page certified letter to Pet and the board explaining, with specific document reference numbers, that my property was not subject to their rules, that no valid lien could attach to my deed for violations of agreements I'd never made, and that further harassment would be met with a tortious interference claim. Certified mail, return receipt, copy retained. I slept fine. Pet did not sleep fine. 3 days later, I came home to find an orange notice stapled to my front gate. Not a legal document, just a printed page with the HOA logo declaring my property in active violation status. She'd also sent a complaint to Haywood County Code Enforcement, alleging my tool shed was unpermitted. That last part was actually clever in a petty sort of way, because while she had no jurisdiction over me, the county did. If the shed lacked a permit, that was a real problem regardless of the HOA drama. I called the county. The shed had been built by my father in 1987. It predated the county's permit requirements for accessory structures under 200 square feet, exempt. The county inspector, a tired man named Darnell who clearly had 17 actual problems on his desk, told me, and I'll paraphrase, "Not even close, you're fine, have a nice day." I left Pet a voicemail with the county's verdict. She filed a second complaint the next morning. My driveway culvert might be improperly sized. The culvert was fine, I'd engineered it myself. But here's where something shifted. Standing in my kitchen at 7 a.m., listening to the creek outside, that cold, steady sound of water moving over smooth stone, I realized Pet wasn't trying to win on the merits. She was trying to exhaust me. File enough complaints, generate enough noise, cost me enough hours and legal fees until I decided the fight wasn't worth it. She had made a significant miscalculation. I have infinite patience for solving problems other people find tedious. It's literally what I was paid to do for 30 years. I poured a second cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the Haywood County GIS parcel map. The county GIS viewer is a masterpiece if you know how to read it. Free, public, shows every parcel in the county, owner, assessed value, encumbrances, and critically whether any parcel is flagged delinquent on property taxes. I zoomed in on Whitmore Ridge. The HOA's office, a converted single-wide modular building just off the main entrance road, sat on a quarter-acre parcel. That's where Pet held her board meetings, where she kept her citation pads, where she conducted the business of enforcing other people's lives. The parcel was owned by Whitmore Ridge HOA LLC. And it was 14 months delinquent on property taxes. I laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen. The kind of short, involuntary bark that makes your dog look up. The organization trying to force me to sell my home for failing their aesthetic standards had neglected to pay $1,847 in annual taxes on their own office building. Takeaway: in most U.S. counties, property with delinquent taxes eventually enters a public auction process, meaning any private citizen can acquire it if the delinquency goes unresolved. I didn't move immediately. I'm an engineer, I don't skip steps. I called Weston Bramble, a real estate attorney out of Waynesville I'd worked with on a road easement case years back. Quiet, unhurried, the kind of confidence that comes from 30 years of watching people make bad legal decisions. I laid out the situation. Weston went silent. "The HOA's office parcel is tax delinquent," he repeated slowly. 14 months, I said. Another pause. I heard him clicking a pen. "Garrett, let me pull a few things. Don't do anything yet, just let me pull a few things." Meanwhile, Pet escalated. She organized what she called a community safety walkthrough, gathered 5 board members and marched the perimeter of my property, photographing everything visible from the road easement. Legally allowed. I watched from my porch, coffee in hand. One board member, heavyset man named Forsyth, who built prefab decks and looked genuinely uncomfortable being there, made the mistake of making eye contact with me. I gave him a small, neighborly wave. He looked away immediately. Good man, he knew this was wrong. Pet submitted the photos to the county as a third complaint, this time alleging my woodpile was a fire hazard near a shared easement. The county fire marshal's office responded within a week. My woodpile sat 17 feet from the road edge. Code required 6. 3 complaints, 3 dismissals. The look on Pet's face the few times I saw her at the mailboxes had developed a particular quality, a tight, compressed expression around the mouth, like someone chronically biting the inside of their cheek. She'd expected me to panic, to lawyer up, hemorrhage money, maybe just sell. What she was getting instead was a retired engineer with a GIS account, a real estate attorney, and nothing but time. Weston called me on a Thursday. "Garrett," he said, in his slow Waynesville drawl, "the HOA's tax delinquency just crossed the threshold where the county issues a formal notice of foreclosure proceeding. They've got 60 days to pay up before it hits the auction calendar." "Can I buy it at auction?" "You can, but there's something better." He paused. Weston understood drama. "There's a private party holding a second position lien on that parcel. A contractor named Burl Arian who built the HOA's parking lot back in 2019 and never got fully paid. He's been sitting on a mechanics lien for $8,200, and Burl is tired of waiting. I already called him. He'll sell you that lien for $5,000 cash." I looked out the kitchen window at the creek. "Wire him the money," I said. "Here's how a mechanics lien works, because this is where it gets interesting." Burl had a documented, recorded lien against the HOA's office parcel for unpaid construction work. By purchasing that lien from him, I stepped directly into his legal position. I now held a secured financial claim against that specific piece of real estate ahead of many other creditors attached to the land itself. Takeaway: a properly filed mechanics lien can be bought and sold like any other financial instrument, and the buyer inherits all of its legal power. The transaction took 11 days. Weston drafted the assignment paperwork. I wired Burl the money. He called me personally to thank me, said he'd spent 4 years chasing that debt and had basically written it off. I told him to buy something nice. He sounded like he might cry a little. I said nothing to Pet, nothing to anyone. I went about my life cutting firewood, consulting on a drainage project in Henderson County, maintaining my exterior color that officially didn't exist. Pet, interpreting my silence as surrender, pressed harder. The board passed a resolution declaring my parcel a nuisance property under their community standards framework, a category they had invented that had no legal standing outside their own documents. That resolution was then used to retain an actual attorney, a man named Prescott Hay out of Asheville who specialized in HOA enforcement and whose letterhead read aggressive community compliance solutions. That phrase, on professional stationery. Prescott's letter restated the demand to sell, added a threat of nuisance abatement action in civil court, implied forced modification or removal of structures on my property. I forwarded it to Weston. His response in full: Prescott Hay is a bully who loses more often than he wins. Write nothing back, say nothing, let me handle it. Weston's letter to Prescott was, by his own description, politely nuclear. It outlined my property's non-membership, cited 3 dismissed county complaints, questioned the legal basis of the nuisance designation, and included, almost as an aside, that my attorney was reviewing the HOA's real property holdings and associated encumbrances for potential adverse action. That last line was deliberate. Prescott would hand it to Pet. Pet would read it and have no idea what it meant. That uncertainty was the point. Because here's what Pet didn't know: the HOA board had turned over twice since 2019. She hadn't been involved when the parking lot was built. She'd inherited the mess without knowing it existed. That's the thing about petty power, it rarely comes with full information. She was operating on the assumption that she understood the board. She didn't understand the ledger. That night I sat on my porch past 10 o'clock. October in the Blue Ridge has a smell I don't know how to fully describe. Cold air, dying leaves, the dry sweetness of white oak acorns going soft in the gravel. Dead quiet except for a distant dog and the creek, that cold, constant sound of water over smooth stone I'd been waking up to for a decade. I had a glass of bourbon and a legal pad. I drew 3 columns. What I have, what I need, what happens next. Under what I have, a mechanic's lien on the HOA's office parcel, a paper trail of 3 dismissed county complaints, an attorney who was now visibly enjoying this case, and 11 acres of legally unencumbered family land I'd built with my own hands. Under what I need, one more thing, something physical, something that would give me actual material control, not just legal leverage. I pulled up the GIS map on my phone. I looked at the entrance road. And I found it. Here's something most people don't know about mountain communities with shared gravel roads. Those roads run on easements. An easement is not ownership, it's a right of use. The road may cross land belonging to someone entirely separate from the people using it, and the easement describes the specific terms under which they're allowed to do so. The main entrance road into Whitmore Ridge, the quarter-mile gravel lane that every property owner used to get in and out, crossed 2 parcels before reaching the public state road. The first parcel was owned by the HOA. The second parcel, a narrow, irregular 0.4-acre finger of land where the road curved around an old walnut grove, was owned by a woman named Rosalind Fitch, 81 years old, living in Knoxville. She'd inherited the land from a great-uncle who died in 2001, never done anything with it, and had been paying $4,200 in annual taxes by automatic bank draft because she'd never gotten around to dealing with it. I found Rosalind through the county property records, found a phone number through a people search service, called her on a Wednesday afternoon, introduced myself as a neighbor interested in buying the parcel. She went quiet for a moment. "That little sliver of land," she said. "Honey, I've been trying to figure out what to do with that thing for 20 years. Next video, what Rosalind said yes to, what I paid, and the morning I handed Pet Voss a document that made the color drain out of her face. Subscribe, this one ends the way you're hoping it ends.